Hello everyone, my name is Kristen Wakeford. I work at the Cardinal Health Fitness Center in Dublin, Ohio. Today's What's What webinar is going to be on carbs. We're going to talk about common myths, facts, things you shouldn't be eating, should be eating, how to modify your diet, all that stuff revolving carbs. One major thing I want to point out to everyone is that this session is just for educational purposes only, and it is not intended to provide any medical advice, so feel free to consult a doctor before making any of these changes. Alright, so we're going to start off this webinar with kind of some interactive, fun questions here. Which of the following are primarily carbs? So you have an apple, broccoli, quinoa, skim milk. So I'm going to give you a couple seconds before I give the answer away. And yes, correct. So all of the above. So that might have been kind of a tricky one. I think a lot of people think that apples, broccoli, milk don't have carbs in them because you just don't really think of them as that way, especially fruits and vegetables. So one major thing to really realize and understand is that calories don't equal carbs. So vegetables, while they also contain carbs, they are very low in calories typically. So starchy vegetables such as potatoes, peas, corn, stuff like that can contain more calories per serving but are still really rich in nutrients, so they are very healthy for you. But low calories doesn't necessarily mean they do not have any carbs. All fruits contain carbs. They're in the form of natural sugars and fiber. Quinoa is a whole grain, which is one of the best ways to get grains in your system. It has more protein than most grains, but also contains carbohydrates as well. And then finally, milk contains carbohydrates in the form of natural sugar. As many of you would know what this is, it's lactose. So participants, you might have some questions on gluten here. Gluten and carbs aren't the same thing as well. Carbs are found in a variety of foods. Gluten is a type of protein found in certain grains, such as wheat, rye, barley, and it is a concern primarily for those with a condition called celiac disease. Alright, so our first thing that we want to talk about is the three sources of fuel for the body. So we have carbohydrates, fat, and protein. One is not more important than the other. They're all important for good health, but we're just going to primarily focus on the carbohydrate portion of it. One thing to note is that all of these are measured in calories, so that's why we talk about calories so much and how to burn those sources of fuel, all that fun stuff. But we're going to talk a little bit more about why do we need carbs in the next slide. Alright, so why do we need carbs? Carbs are broken down and turned into glucose, which is our blood sugar. A simple sugar is used for brain power, fuel for energy and movement, and stored energy. So let's talk about the brain power part. Glucose is the brain's main fuel source. So it's super, super important, so we can always keep that active and going. 2, fuel for energy and movement. So your muscles, along with other cells and tissues throughout the body, need it for fuel. And then stored energy, liver stores carbs fueling your body between meals. So extra carbohydrates, it's stored in the liver in the form of glycogen. Glycogen provides fuel when it is needed, such as those period of fasting. So this was very prevalent in a long time ago when we didn't have grocery stores. Hunters and all that, they would eat what they could and then they would live off of those stored carbs until they could find their next meal. Because the liver stores these carbs, it can be a reason why it is so hard to burn them sometimes if you're eating in excess of the carbs. So that's why it's pretty important to not always minimize and have a low carb diet, but to stick within your dietary guidelines, and we're going to talk about how you can figure that out soon. So for this segment, we're going to talk about a common myth, and then we're going to myth bust it with a fact. So carbs cause weight gain. That is a huge myth. Carbs aren't the cause of your weight gain, but they can be associated with it. So the fact about it is too many calories from any source may lead to weight gain. So if you have too many calories and protein, like way overboard, you're going to gain weight from that. If you have too many from carbs, you're going to gain weight. One, we didn't talk about it before too, alcohol. That's a source of fuel for the body. It has calories. You can gain weight from it. Anything in excess will help escalate gaining weight. So what can we do about that? Individuals can sometimes eat larger quantities of these carbs. Example, bread, pasta, sweets. So it's super important to balance it and portion control. Think about when you had pasta last. Did you just make the penne noodles with the sauce and have maybe a piece of Texas toast bread? Was that your dinner? Could we limit that portion size? Can we measure it out and then add some veggies? Let's have some broccoli on the side, have some asparagus, let's have whatever it is that you like, but let's have the pasta be less of the focus of the dish, and let's supplement it with things that have greater nutritional value. That is going to be a key to how to balance your diet a little bit better. Lastly, I do want to mention individuals with certain medical conditions such as diabetes or PCOS. They may be more sensitive to carbohydrate foods, and you may need to balance your choices throughout the day a little bit more, or balance them with medications, etc. So it is best for this specific demographic to work with a registered dietitian or their physician to figure out a good game plan for them. So our second myth here, a low carb diet is best for weight loss. So that is something that a lot of people think. So the fact about it is the key to weight loss is creating healthy, sustainable nutrition and physical activity habits. It is also not a one size fits all, thing. Diet is very dependent on person to person. Things that work for your neighbor may not work for you. It may. But it is important to figure out what is good for you. There's a lot of tests out there. I know the fitness center, we do a body gem test that will tell you more specifically what you should and shouldn't eat, the proportion sizes, stuff like that. We also have a registered dietitian on staff, but other places as well do those services as well. Another thing to mention here is that low carb varies greatly among various diet plans. So low carbs for you may not be low carbs for someone else. I know my fiance, his low carbs is going to be a lot more than what I should be eating as a low carb diet. So that is something to take into consideration when you may be trying a plan that your friend is doing. A couple things that can happen if you don't eat enough carbs could be that it will be challenging for you to sustain it long term, especially if you love your carbs, pasta lovers, all that. You could eliminate important nutrient-rich foods that are linked to health benefits, such as disease prevention and stuff like that. And you can get those from healthy whole grains and fruits and vegetables. Some low-carb diets replace nutritious food with foods that are high in unhealthy saturated fat and sodium. So you're limiting your carbs, but then you're upping the bad things. So it's kind of counteractive here, and it's not the best for you. So there are three main forms of carbs. We're going to first talk about dietary fiber. These are found in plant foods such as fruit, vegetables, whole grains, beans. Most of it goes through the body undigested and is linked to a variety of health benefits, but the thing is most Americans only eat about half of the fiber needed each day. Two are going to be our starches. They're found in foods such as breads, grains, potatoes, beans, corn, such as that. They are starchy vegetables. And then three, sugars. They are the most basic form of carbohydrates, but there are two types of sugars. One is going to be those naturally occurring sugars that are found naturally in milk, so lactose, and fruit, fructose. Added sugars are the other type, and these are found in foods just for the sweetness and taste. So these are table sugar, honey, high fructose corn syrup, stuff like that. Added sugars do not provide any nutritional value to foods and drinks. So that's when you find things in the store that say no added sugars or reduced sugar, stuff like that, it usually means that there are sugars in it, but it's going to be from naturally occurring sugars, so stuff from the fruit plant or from milk. So how many carbs do you need? It's not a one size fits all. It is going to vary from person to person, but a couple recommendations from the dietary guidelines for Americans include make at least half of your grains whole grains. limit your foods and sugars in drinks and stuff like that, and those added sugars. And then you're going to also want to consider your plate and fill it with the most nutritious options. So on that right, you're going to see half of your plate should be fruits and vegetables, a fourth should be those whole grains, a fourth should be lean protein, and then you should get 1 serving of low-fat dairy. For more information on your specific unique needs, you're going to want to visit www.choosemyplate.gov/myplateplan, and you can calculate your nutritional needs and recommendations for how to meet them. Alright, so this is the fun part. We're going to talk about what you should choose more often in your diet. So we're going to start with fruits with no added sugars. So things that you'll find in the grocery store, those apples in that produce section, the grapes. You're not going to want to try to find, in the middle of the aisles where they have sometimes those fruit in those cups. Fruit cups aren't bad, but you might want to look at all of the nutritious labels on the back to make sure that there's not added sugars in it to make it taste better. 2, you're going to want vegetables in a variety of colors. So, you're going to have your broccoli, you're going to have your carrots, you're going to have your radishes, all that fun stuff. Making sure you get all different types because they provide different nutritional value in them. This is including fresh canned with no added salt and frozen without added salt or sauces. Whole grains and whole grain products. So whole wheat, brown rice, barley, popcorn, quinoa. I will say one of my favorite snacks when I'm really, really hungry is to get some popcorn. So I will use some popcorn. I'll try not to do much butter and salt on it, just plain popcorn. I know there's ones at Kroger that are lower in calorie, and I think like the whole bag is like 100 and some calories. Like it's super low, and I don't eat it all myself. I usually split it with my fiance. So that's such a great little snack that is pretty low cal and low carb. Low fat milk and yogurt with no added sugars. And then legumes such as kidney beans, black beans, pinto beans, lentils, many others. Legumes are also rich in protein, so you kind of get a dual action there on your fuel sources. If you have special dietary needs related to certain medication, like I said, the diabetes, the PCOS, you will want to talk to your doctor, though, before kind of taking forward all this information. And here's the not so fun part, the choose less often, the things that we love so much. Number 1, sugary drinks, sodas, sports drinks, fruit punch, lemonade, sugar sweetened tea, coffee creamer in your coffee, Starbucks drinks, stuff like that. We all know what they are. Not saying you can't have them, just try to pick them less often or pick better alternatives for them. If you're having sports drinks, let's try to shoot for the Gatorade Zero that have barely any calories, 0 sugar, things like that. Your number 2 is going to be those sweets, candies, desserts. Nonetheless, you know what I'm talking about. And 3, you're going to want to find those refined grains such as white bread, white rice, and pasta. We're going to want to substitute those. Try to get those whole grains. I like to do brown rice or cauliflower rice, so it's actually the vegetable cauliflower, and it's diced up and it has a rice consistency. Many of these options are enriched with important nutrients. Whole grain choices offer additional dietary fiber and phytochemicals, so chemicals found in plants that may have health benefits. And a big disclaimer, while many of the food can fit in moderation, so you can have these in your diet, you're going to want to aim to limit the foods with few nutrients and replace them with those options rich in nutrients and fiber. So what will we do next? Well, we're going to replace our sugary snacks with fruit and vegetables. We're going to shoot for those no added sugars. We're going to replace a refined grain with a whole grain option, and we're going to replace a sugary drink with water. So again, I'm not asking you to go 0 to 100, but maybe your next meal, when you're going in the grocery store and you're thinking about all the things you need, when you go to pick up those penne noodles or cavatappi, whatever you want, maybe let's try to shoot for that whole grain option. 1 meal a week. Let's try to gradually introduce it into the family, into your diet. Maybe it's your drinks. The next time you want to pick up a 2 liter of Coke, we're going to pick the Coke Zero, the Diet Coke. We're going to pick water, or Mio sports packets. There are things that you can kind of put in water that provide some flavor, but it's not going to be quite as bad. Or maybe instead of picking fruit popsicles, we're going to pick the actual fruit. So just try to find one thing you want to change this week, and each week make it something different, and maybe you'll find something that you really actually enjoy, versus what you used to have. So again, for more information on your specific needs for your dietary guidelines and tip sheets, healthy recipes, sample menus, stuff like that, you're going to want to go to that website on this page, www.choosemyplate.gov, for all that information. Thank you so much for watching and listening this webinar. Again, my name's Kristen, and I would be more than gladly to help answer any questions that you may have. So feel free to drop me an email. And if you would like some of my recipes that I make throughout the week that I feel match the guidelines pretty well, feel free to reach out, and I would be gladly to share some of those. So other than that, have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next week.